You are now listening to a member of the Disney Podcast family. Head over to Disney Podcast Family on Instagram to see all the latest posts for this show and links to other great Disney podcasts.
Welcome back to Miles from Main Street. There was Muppet news this week, and I've got things to say.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejados de las
This here's a wildest ride in the
And we're back. I'm Brian Lewis, and over there is Stuart Boyles. Stuart, there was Muppet news this week. Do you have anything to say about it?
I sure do. It's going to be fun. Let's talk.
Before we get into it, though, please like and subscribe to the show on your podcast app or on YouTube. And be sure to share it out. Remember, we have new episodes every Tuesday. So also remember, on Fridays, you can find the Disney Dash, a short form podcast with my daughter Mia, where she is talking Disney from A to Z, but from a kid's perspective. She did miss this past week, but we're still working on getting the next one out. So watch for it. It may even be earlier than this Friday since we missed it this past one. So, All right, Stuart, Muppets.
Well, I mean, should we say a rest in peace first, or do you want to give the news? How do you want to do this?
Yeah, we don't want to do the rest. I mean, let's hit the news. All right.
Okay.
So
Break it down.
Friday morning. Breaking news coming out of Disney World, and what we were fearing, worrying about, losing sleep over, our worst nightmare.
Well,
came to fruition. The news came out that Monsters Inc. Land would be overtaking Muppets Courtyard and Muppet Vision 3D.
Yes, that's the sad part.
Now, the fun part of the news of taking that land over, if you look at the concept art, which I was pleasantly happy with the art, they are extending back out further. There's more land being used up for Hollywood Studios, and that's where the door coaster is going to go. Back, if you were to go back by the studio store back there, and go, like, if you're able to punch through that wall they have and keep going, that's where they're going to put the door coaster. Mama Melrose is turning into Harryhausen's.
That's an impressive thing. Also, the door coaster. Like, the first time I ever saw Monsters Inc., they go through that sequence, and I'm like, that should be a ride. That should be an attraction. Why is that not an attraction? And how long has Monsters Inc. been out? It's like 20 years now, right?
I don't think
close
it's been
to
that long.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been
more than 10. It's been more.
It
than
has
10.
been. Yeah, maybe 15. Anyway,
I mean, we could Google it, but that's a work. But it's been a long time, and it makes sense for that to be a ride. So I'm glad there's finally a ride for it.
I agree, and it has been a plan for some time. Somebody's been thinking about that for quite some time, but the timing wasn't right, from what I understand. Right. So anyway, I'm excited for that. I think we're going to get some cool stuff for Monsters Inc. But alas, they couldn't put it over at Launch Bay. They had to put it in Muppets.
Yeah.
I'm excited, though, because Muppets is taking over Rock and Roller Coaster.
That's a cool thing. That is a very, very cool thing.
I mean, we've got a band within Rock and Roller Coaster now that's on their way out the door. They're they're not doing much anymore, right? Like Steven Tyler's what, 75, I think.
I mean, but Aerosmith is pretty iconic. So like I think the relationship was good. I think it's also starting to, we can show its age and not necessarily just Steven Tyler's age. I mean, really, it's a relationship that was good and I think needs to be refreshed. And I'm gonna be honest, with some of him in there, that's cool, right? Basically the same ride, just. Hey guys, I'm real sorry. I live way far away from Main Street, and sometimes we can't get really good internet, and it snowed, and so I imagine the squirrels are running on internet cables, and it's just not a good time. So I apologize, Brian, and I apologize to the audience if I'm a little jittery, way more than caffeine.
And I'm mostly concerned about you guys being able to hear him. So if he freezes up here and there, I'll let that go. But as you heard, he kind of went for a little bit there. So I will try to catch that and get that out of here. But we just kind of let the camera roll and we go.
See what happens.
So if it gets to be too bad, we'll work through that. But it's a part of northern Wisconsin.
That's true. And I mean, I can't go much more north in northern Wisconsin.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, we'll keep working through it. The Muppets. You were talking about the Rock Roller Coaster.
I love the idea that it's Electric Mayhem going to be like, I would be okay with just taking out the ride's the same. The attraction is the exact same, but instead of Aerosmith, it's Electric Mayhem. Like that would be fantastic, wouldn't it?
Well, and see, in my ever wanting more, I don't want to walk in and have somebody say, "Hey, Dr. Teeth, you're late for the show. We gotta go," and have him flash some bad gang sign with his hand and say, "How about a super stretch limo?" And like I want it to be Muppets. I want to get a little bit more out of it than just the story that's already there. So I hope that the queue and you walk into the building is more razzle dazzle Muppets, right? And Electric Mayhem.
It is going to be the Razzle Dazzle Muppets. I mean, the one thing the Imagineers are really good at is putting you in that experience. And they're not just going to recycle. They're not going to do what I just said. I mean, they get paid a lot more money to come up with way better ideas than what I just said. So
that's true. But let's remember, they're also building a Monsters, Inc. land at the same time. So I hope they don't skimp on Rock and Roller Coaster.
I would love it to be something new and interesting. One of the things about Muppets 3D was that even though it had sort of shown its age, it was fresh. I mean, it was still very fun to be in. And like the pre-show with, what's the guy? What's the big tall Muppet who walks around?
Are you talking about Sweetums? The big tall Muppet?
Sweetums walking around and so Sweetums walking around and like being part of that pre-show, like that was really fun. And then the whole show itself was really fun. I will say that while I love attractions and love rides, nothing beats a good show. So like, are we going to lose another sit down and get out of the hot situation? I don't like that.
Well, no. So they are going to use the Muppet Theater for a Monsters, Inc. show.
Oh, okay.
I have often believed and thought that Disney doesn't like to use too many IPs in more than one park. right? So if we're
Mhm.
going to have a Monsters Inc. land, my thought is maybe Laugh Floor goes to that land.
Yeah.
It does fit the Hollywood Studios theme of put you in the show
Mhm.
because so you could easily move it there. The problem is Tomorrowland, and
Well,
what that would do to Tomorrowland. So I'm not here to talk about that today. We got to talk Muppets. We got too much to say about Muppets, but I just that's one thing that's in my head. They did say that there would be a Muppet or a Monsters show within the Muppet Theater.
and that theater has got to be rigged in such a way, built in such a way to have a really immersive uh, theater, right? It's a show. So I can't imagine it's going to be bad by any means. And I'm glad to hear that there's a show. That's news that I hadn't heard. So
Yes, that was part of the news release on Friday that there would be some sort of theater show going on. So,
mhm.
but moving back over to Rock and Roller Coaster, I really hope that it gets a Tiana's Bayou Adventure type of makeover where they completely redo it. Okay, going back to my trip, all right, we got to go on Tiana's for the first time, right?
Mhm.
And I had watched the videos ahead of time because I knew when it came out, it was going to be a while before I got to ride it. And so when things like that happen, I don't try to avoid spoilers, I guess. I will just jump right in and let's go for it, right?
Mhm.
So watching it, I could go, hey, I remember that room. I remember that room. I know where that room
Mhm.
is, right? Riding it though, completely new experience. I had never once was like, I remember this room or I remember this
Mhm.
part. Like it was other than maybe the big climb up to the big drop,
Yeah.
like obviously that's iconic enough that you're going to remember that. But doing, like just the whole thing, it just felt like a brand new experience.
Is it the same track inside?
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I mean, I'm not an Imagineer. I don't know how easy or hard it is to change like the bones of, like, if they're going to change Rock and Roller Coaster, right? I doubt they're going to change the track layout. I feel like that's got to be pretty cemented in stone.
Yeah, I would think so. But maybe they can do more than just some traffic signs now. Like maybe we could
Yeah.
get a little more because right now I feel like Rock and Roller Coaster is just kind of an amped up Space Mountain in the fact that you're just flying past these road signs.
Hmm.
And I'd love to see something more like a Guardians of the Galaxy
Oh,
where you can see things going on as you're riding.
mhm. But
Um
I mean that the coaster ride is so quick though.
True, it is. I mean, you're moving 60 miles an hour or whatever, right?
Right.
So you want to be able to, you're going to have to, that's why they're Imagineers. I'm not, like they're going to
Right.
have to
Exactly.
incorporate that somehow.
But also the technology has come a long way since Rock and Roller Coaster was designed and built and all that sort of stuff. So I got to think you'll see stuff like projected screens and LCD video monitors, and they're pulling in technology from Rise. They're pulling in technology from the Guardians. They're pulling in technology from Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railroad. I got to think that all of those things are being, they may not utilize every single one of them because I doubt the Muppets is going to be as big a draw as Rise of the Resistance, but it's going to be something, and they're going to utilize what they've learned.
Well, and I think that leads us into the next point I was going to make, and that's, they're building this. They're going to redo this coaster as Muppets, but they're also building an entire land in the monsters stuff,
Right.
right? And there's only so much money that goes around, unfortunately. So
Well, My Disney
Here's-
Plus subscription is up recently, so they got that money going on.
But here's the thing, right? Like a lot of us in our age range, you, me, Mikhailo, my wife, all of us in this age range of Disney adults are whining when they make changes. Okay. I go back to D23 and the announcement about the Cars Land taking over, not Cars Land, but the Cars stuff taking over the rivers of America, right? And at the time I was like, yeah, that's really going to suck. And I kind of had the same viewpoint that a lot of us had and a lot of us was whining about. But somebody said it, right? It's time for our kids to get their park. We've had our time. We've had our fun. We've been able to take our kids to that fun, and now it's time for our kids to have that park and take, so I think part of that is they're getting ready for that, so I know you got points to say, and I'm not trying to cut you off. I just want to get through this quick though. Like we have had our time. And so you look at like they're putting money into the Cars thing, and they're putting money into Monsters Inc. And we've got the Muppets sitting there, right? The Muppets are this very classic, very enduring IP that they haven't got a clue what to do with. So this is the thing, right? Like if you and I, and maybe you too, listener, if you go and you watch the old Muppet Show, the original one from the 80s, or even go back further to the weird stuff that they had on Saturday Night Live, right? Like
don't. I mean, do, but don't.
But if you look at that stuff through the eyes of an adult, right? The humor is much different, and you pick up things a lot differently than when you were a kid, right? And if you were to go look into the history of the Muppets and everything, Jim Henson did not create the Muppets for kids. That was Sesame Street. That was later. That was Fraggle Rock, right? Like the Muppets were meant for adults. And that's why they started on Saturday Night Live. That's why they got a primetime show. They weren't on Saturday morning cartoons. They were on, Thursday night or whatever it was. So now you have this park. And for many years, the target demographic for Disney has been childless millennials. Why? Because they have the money to spend. I know some childless millennials that are now having children. And like their visits are going to drop off, unfortunately. Disney doesn't want that, right? They want the people that don't have kids still, but what's going to be popular with those people? Monsters, Cars, Toy Story, Frozen.
Yeah. So if you think about it this way, the stuff that we really are into, Rise of the Resistance, Galaxy's Edge, stuff like that, was all the stuff that we saw when we were little kids on, watching Star Wars on TV, right? Playing with Lego. That was what we watched. All of the clamshell Disney boxes, right? That was the nostalgia for us. We're going to die soon. Brian, I hope that's not a shock to you.
No, I'm not old. Stop it.
Not immediately, but we're not the target demographic anymore, right? Like you just were saying, the people who are going to propel those parks, the Walt Disney Company into the future, didn't watch Star Wars growing up playing with Lego. They watched Cars. They watched Frozen. They watched Monsters Inc. They watched, The Incredibles. They watched all of those movies.
I agree with you 100%, but I do have to point out that maybe Star Wars is a bad example, because Star Wars is something that has bridged generations. When you take a look, you think about the prequels, there's a generation that's their set of movies, right? And
Right.
that's why Obi-Wan Kenobi just had his own Disney Plus show.
Yeah.
Like the new prequel or the new sequel trilogy, it did enough money that they put the timeline in the park, right? Because at some point, the kids that have been watching that trilogy are going to want to do that. And so that's kind of maybe a bad example. But I totally understand your point.
Okay. Let's take Star Wars out. Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, Robin Hood, Jungle Book, Fox and the Hound. Let me think. There's a whole bunch of movies that Gen X and elder millennials watched, and you could Muppets is a prime example of this. We can create content based around, like you were just saying, based around those IPs, or when the generation that are growing up and are going to get those jobs and are going to have that money and have kids, they're going to want to come to the parks and see the stuff that they watched growing up, which is Cars and Frozen and Monsters Inc. and whatever else.
Right. Now, all that said, you've got the Muppets sitting here that they know people are going to be upset about if it's gone. There's just enough following. And I think, thank the Lord, the Electric Mayhem show did just well enough.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, we still have a market that we need to appease to here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting this. We're getting Rock and Roller Coaster. Now, a few people online have pointed out that there's a show building next to Rock and Roller Coaster. Okay. It was Lightning McQueen. They're putting some villain stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that opens sometime soon. Maybe it'll change at this point. Who knows? But right now the plan is for some villain stuff to go in there. And it's a show building. Like maybe we get some sort, because they have said that they do want to do something with that Muppet Vision film. I've heard rumblings of Disney Plus. I've heard rumblings of putting it somewhere. Be it still in the park? I don't know. I think that makes a nice little Muppets courtyard of itself right there. You can move that Miss Piggy fountain over there and no one's the wiser, right? Like,
well, especially not in 5 years when everybody's forgotten about it.
So yeah, I think we've got an opportunity there. It's just how much money are they willing to put into it? And so I need to bring it back to my point a little bit ago, is that we have this IP that's built for adults, and they don't know how to handle that, right? And when you think about that, coupled with the idea that childless millennials and I don't know that Gen Z is quite there yet, but they're starting to get into that demographic as well. I don't know. Like I think about my kids. I've got now Jacob's 20, Paige is 18. They know who the Muppets are. I don't think they care. Right?
Nope.
So I think that's part of the problem. Is that there's been such a gap in what the Muppets have been because they don't know what the heck to do with them, that now their demographic isn't going to care as much.
Well, and the last movie that came out from the Muppets was Muppets Most Wanted, which that's a train wreck.
Yeah.
We tried watching it, and then evil Kermit showed up, and I was like, no, we're done. No, turn go away.
Yep.
I even got through the Tina Fey singing part, but then evil Kermit showed up, and we just can't. No, that's inappropriate. I think that they had an opportunity to capitalize on the Muppets with Jason Segel that they missed. But I'm sure there was a calculated reason for it. Maybe it only made X and it should have made, more than that. But
I'm going to take you back to that time. I, at the time, was driving back and forth a lot for my job around Thanksgiving time, and I was lucky enough to listen to a podcast with Jason Segel on one of those drives. And he wanted to make a Muppet movie and bring them back to a relevance.
Mm-hmm.
And he did that.
Mm-hmm.
They came to him and said, how about number 2? And he said, no, I'm done. Like, I've told my story. I've done what I wanted to do. I have nothing left to give.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine they said, what if we pay you double?
Well,
no, it was not going to be good. And they said, well, great. Now we have this relevancy. What do we do? And
they should have. I mean, again, I am not on the board, or I have no. Look, I'm not a person in that business, and so there's a lot other plates that are spinning that I have no knowledge of. But it would have been interesting if they were able to bring the Muppets into those things. I mean, we talked about not seeing the Muppets on Saturday morning, but lest ye forget the Muppet Babies, Brian.
Yes. Okay. But this is that came later, right? Like
right. But the
80s.
point is, they reinvented it for the younger kids.
That's a good point. That is a good point.
And so they can do that, but at the same time, we don't see any Muppet Baby rides at Disneyland or Disney, at Walt Disney World.
There really isn't any. There was. Nope. I'm thinking of something else. Listeners, please go to YouTube, find Muppet Family Christmas.
Oh, yes.
It's about an hour-long special. It includes the Muppets, the entire gang. It includes Sesame Street, singing a beautiful carol and putting on a Christmas story type of a Christmas carol type of show, right? And it also includes the Fraggles, which Fraggle Rock was on HBO, and I didn't have HBO. And it drove me crazy because they'd have free HBO weekends, and I'd just like go watch as much Fraggle Rock as I could because I loved it so much.
Do you have Max now to watch it?
I have Max. I haven't watched it. So I mean, I did a few years ago when it first was like
hey,
look, we've got Fraggle Rock. Then I was watching it, but yeah, I haven't watched the new stuff either. But anyway, this Christmas special, we watched it the other night, and you get done watching it, and I was like, what more Christmas can we watch? Like, I haven't felt that much into Christmas. Like, I don't know. There are seasons that I go through that it's like, yeah, Christmas. And there are seasons that I go through that it's like, well, it's finally over, right? Like, and I'm sure everyone does it. But the other night, like, it's before Thanksgiving, and my wife has been full-blown Christmas since the end of October. But
I knew she was a good person.
She's a very good person. But like, I haven't really been like ready to get into Christmas. And the other night we got done watching it, and I'm like, we need to watch more Christmas. Like, this was awesome. And then we watched Agatha all along because I wanted to get that done with. But
yeah.
And I have to point it out because my wife's going to listen to this and point it out. So,
so right after COVID, I directed our community theater's version of A Christmas Carol. And it's in the public domain, so you can adapt it and rewrite it and all that sort of stuff. And we did our own adaptation because it's community theater, and I didn't want to pay a bunch of royalties for something that, essentially I could rewrite or work with people to rewrite and suit our needs. And so in that, I did a lot of research. I watched as many versions of A Christmas Carol I could find. And the Muppets Christmas Carol is like one of the most faithful and honest adaptation of Charles Dickens' story. It's so great and it's so wonderful, and it goes into my yearly, sometimes more than once, Christmas rotation. And Muppet Treasure Island and the Muppet Movie, The Great Muppet Caper. I mean, all of these were great movies, and you could do a version of that now. I don't know what property you would meld with the Muppets, but I don't think it matters. You find the property that you were inspired by and you make a movie with it and you put the Muppets in it. This idea of Princess Bride Muppets, while it looks great on paper, do not do that, people. Leave that one alone. But, I mean...
I agree. There is and that was one when you were talking Muppets Most Wanted. I think they were having this exact conversation. You have these types of Muppet movies, right? You've got the Get the Gang Back Together. You've got the Muppets as a story, a different popular story. I think any Disney fan would love to see them make a whole bunch of Muppet movies of the princess movies, right?
So Piggy, so Piggy is Sleeping Beauty.
Yes. And Rapunzel.
Yeah.
Moana.
Okay. There was a DVD of fairy tales that the Muppets redid, and I forget the name of it, but it was hilarious. And one of the songs is Quanta Lagusta, and I have no idea what that means, but in my head I just hear Piggy singing it over and over again. I think that there's an opportunity to bring the relevancy of the Muppets back, but there's seemingly this not wanting to drive it. So
there is a disconnect, and they had and I get the Disney 23 magazine. I don't know if you're a D23 member or not, but I get the magazine. Yeah. And they had a great article about the Electric Mayhem that they had. Oh gosh, and I'm gonna forget the names now, but they had a guy from the Disney side, and they had a well-known. Oh gosh, it's killing me that I'm forgetting his name right now. He's one of the puppeteers, but he came up with the Electric Mayhem idea. Or something along those lines, and so did this Disney guy. They kind of came up with the same idea, so they put them together and they came up with the Electric, and it was one of those lightning in a bottle moments, and it's like, boom, there you go. Now I'm worried about the Muppets because the original Muppeteers are aging. They're getting to that point, right? Steve Whitmire, he's gone. He kind of lost his mind for a little bit there, and he's been moved on. Great Kermit actor. They still need to find someone to do Kermit's voice. That's the other thing about Muppet Family Christmas. I'm telling you, go watch Muppet Family Christmas. At the end, you get a cameo from Jim Henson himself.
Nice.
And he's just standing there talking to Sprocket the dog. But you can hear Kermit's voice, right? I would love to see video, and I'm hoping, I bet it's out there. I just have to go find it. I'd love to see video of Walt doing Mickey's voice, and maybe I have actually seen a little bit of that. But in a show like that, like I was just going, oh gosh, I can hear hear Kermit coming out of his, and he wasn't even trying to be Kermit. It was just him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, like that. I've completely lost my train. That just blew my whole train of thought. So
it's Mickey Minnie's Runaway Train in Brian's head.
Yeah.
I wonder if there is a licensing disconnect, or if there's a reason we don't have new Muppet content, or the Muppet content we do have is very sparse. And I wonder if that's because Disney doesn't own the Muppets outright.
They do.
I know. Do they really? Okay.
They have the whole thing at this point. I mean, they don't have Sesame Street and
right,
Rock, but they have Muppets.
Okay. Well, maybe that shoots my thing out of the water. But I will say that Sesame Street is going strong. They keep getting renewed by PBS and through PBS, and now with the HBO sort of having the influence there. And there's a few of the puppeteers on TikTok, and they sort of work within like the ability to keep the magic there and all that sort of stuff, but also sort of give a behind the scenes thing. And they're really passionate. You can tell they're really passionate about what they do as far as the Muppets go, and far as the puppeteering and the bringing those characters to life.
And that's where that you reminded me what my point was.
Look at me go.
Yeah, right. And that was before Jim Henson rudely interrupted me. But I'm worried about these puppeteers aging, because when you look at Electric Mayhem and realize that one of them was a major contributor to that, and you look at the successful stuff going back to Christmas Carol, that was all Brian Henson at that point, because he just died, and it was their tribute, right?
Yeah,
everyone was on par. So like, you need to take this talent, give them a voice to train the next generation. And I have this fear that that's not going to happen, and we're in trouble.
Yeah. And the artistic, there's an artistry to puppeteering that I think gets overlooked. I don't want to say lost, but definitely overlooked when you think about like, oh, we can just make Abby Cadabby computer generated, and or do like the first 5 minutes as puppeteer, and then do the rest animated. And that's okay, but there's magic when you watch Sesame Street, or when you watch Fraggle Rock, or when you watch the old Muppet Show, or even the 90s Muppet. Was it called the Muppet Show when they had the backstage TV thing? Yeah,
that was the Muppet Show.
Yeah, all of those things have this magic to it. When you watch the original Muppet movie and they're riding those bikes, you want to go down a deep dive, search how they did that, because the magic will get ruined. But there's entire like subreddits and discourse online figuring out how they did that. And nobody really knows, because they don't really know, but they think they have ideas. But yeah, that's magic, and that magic is like 50 years old now. So, I would love to see them keep that magic coming back, but at the same time, if they're going to put their efforts into something, they're going to put their efforts into something like Monsters Inc., which the kids like and have seen.
And I look at something like Star Wars, where they put out Last Jedi that was troubled, and 6 months later put out Solo, which was a good movie, but it did terrible.
Yeah.
And they were gun shy after that, and they've relegated everything to Disney Plus until recently. That is definitely, I think, something that management is concerned about, that they did a Muppet TV show, canceled it, because the first half of the season was terrible and they got canceled, and the second half was amazing because they weren't holding it back anymore or something. They found their stride, but it was already canceled.
Well, there's a conversation we have over on the Welcome to Level 7 podcast that I champion all the time, which is this whole idea of creating by committee when they're writing stuff. And I'm not talking about a bunch of writers getting into a room and writing, but there's these artificial deadlines and artificial mileposts and artificial goals that are imposed upon the creators of these things. When you look at something like Secret Invasion, that was bad. It was real bad, and I can say that in public. But part of the reason it was bad is because there was a lot of pressure on it to be this amazing thing, and that pushed it out of what it actually was, which was really small and tiny, or should have been really small and tiny, and a story about one character dealing with other things. So that, I think, would happen to the Muppets if they tried to do, which is probably what happened to the TV series, is they had these artificial constraints on it, and then they didn't make that early enough or soon enough, and they just were like, "No, you're done."
Yeah.
Same with the National Treasure TV series. I thought that was great, but they canceled that too.
Well, and more recently, we need to be careful about how we talk about canceled shows, because a lot was canceled just for budget reasons. They weren't looking at success of the show at all. So, some of the more recent stuff, we need to be careful with that. But, just talking Muppets, there's been such a lull in the middle and such a troubled go at getting the Muppets to relevancy, save for that one movie. And it's just like Star Wars. You look at that trilogy that happened, and then, and I'm sorry I keep bringing up Star Wars, but that's my jam. So
I was gonna say, you kind of have something going on back there.
It's hard to point in reverse, but yeah, I got
it. Is
this is one of my favorite pieces that I have now. But yeah, I got that. Anyway, when I get this room redone, it's going to be amazing. Let me tell you.
But that's kind of the point, is that Clone Wars, the TV show Clone Wars, which is what that poster is, or at least associated with it. That might be the movie poster, but whatever. The TV show, The Clone Wars, is that thing that the kids played with Legos in front of. I mean, is that for a lot of kids? You just need to give it that chance to grow, which is something they don't do nowadays. And if you were to give the Muppets a chance to grow something, I think it could regain that relevance.
And I think that there is room for a family-friendly Muppets show, right? But I think I would love to see it be edgy again too, like it was, where a kid could watch it and not know what the heck they're talking about, right? And they've tried all that stuff, but I think when you really get, we've gone circles around this enough. I think that we're at a point now that it's just something that they really need to talk to the puppeteers. They need to talk to the people that worked with Jim Henson, that have had success. Maybe Jason Segel's not interested in doing another movie, but maybe he can tell you how he did it, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's learnings there that you can get from him. How did you come up with your idea? Simple questions. Bring that together to make them relevant again, and then maybe our hope and dream of an entire Muppet courtyard around Rock and Roller Coaster would really happen. But right now, I don't know that the budget's going to allow for it. We may end up with the Rock and Roller Coaster with Electric Mayhem and the Muppets. Oh, and over here you can go see the villains because they make money too, right?
It occurs to me that we're kind of lucky to have gotten something, and I think you said this earlier, so I apologize if I'm reiterating something, but the fact that we're getting the Muppets still remaining in the park and actually in a pretty big ride situation, a pretty big attraction. It's not like they got relegated to, here's a meet and greet with, Sweetums because we still have the costume, right? That's an impressive thing. And I think we need to give that its due because at the end of the day, they could have just shuttered the whole thing and put him out into pasture, but they didn't. They're giving him
and that is such a great point to make because that was my initial reaction on Friday when they put this out was, holy cow, we're keeping them. And we're not just keeping them, we're putting them into a popular attraction. We're not just losing a stage show. We're going to get them in something that may actually help the relevancy. And I know people are sad that we're losing an opening day attraction. We're losing the last thing Jim Henson worked on. But I think we should be happy that we've had it for 30 plus years. And if they want to keep it in some way.
And if Captain EO can come back, so can Muppet 3D. I mean, not immediately, but I mean, I dug Captain EO. I still watch. You want to watch something on YouTube? You can watch Captain EO on YouTube. You kind of have to cross your eyes a little bit because the 3D is still there. But I would have loved to have seen a feature, nice DVD version of that. But I don't know.
And I've never been able to see Captain EO. I think it's available on YouTube, so I'll have to go check it out. But Stuart, it was a good night to do this. Yeah. I had so much to say about the Muppets that I think we said it. I think we've said it.
Melissa Pilgrim is our choice for your next Disney vacation. You can reach her at amagicalpilgrimage@gmail.com. We thank her for her support.
So thank you to everyone listening and watching on YouTube. Remember, episodes are every Tuesday. New episodes every Tuesday. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. As a bonus, leave us a comment and we'll read it on the show. So as we like to say, some live close,
but others don't.
Come on, Stuart. We'll get you there.
Okay. Hey. Still trying to figure this thing out.
Hey, so let's talk about it. We'll see you next time on Miles from Main Street. Oh, there we go.